A number of years ago, a gentleman stood before us and took us on a magical adventure to a place where all the great five-pin bowlers reside. Those of us of the younger generation were finally able to put faces to the names we heard so much about. Unfortunately, the recounting of this journey seems to get longer as we add more and more friends to the list of people that we are reuniting with, as witnessed by the 6 names I just read. At this time, I call upon Walter Heeney to present his 2024 version of his travels. Walter?
I'm often asked where the Five-Pin Bowling Hall of Fame is located. Is it at a bowling center, or maybe in the old Sport Alliance building, or at the C&E? No, it's not at any of these places, but I assure you it does exist. Recently, in a deep sleep, I caught a glimpse of the Hall of Fame, and it was quite a place. I had a chance to meet everyone, and for so many, an opportunity to put a living face with the names and pictures I have become familiar with over the years. Wouldn't you know it, when I arrived, it was bowling night. Teams were on the lanes and the center itself was beautiful. Its name, Future Lanes, were years ahead of our time. It seemed appropriate, and the Cloud9 Lounge was complete with a full array of virtual reality games, which everybody knew how to play. Jack Fine wanted the name changed to, of course, Future Lanes Bowlerama. The bowling center was run by experts, and they were all there. John Martin, Wilf Barlow, Jim Beeforth, Leon Hudecki, Ralph Crump, Bob Totsky, Jerry James, along with newcomers Ann Depew, and from Crayola, Jackie Hawkins, who had markers for everyone in heavenly colors. Heaven was about to get organized. Marge Moore was joined by Doug Miller and Gene Spry to start a YBC, and Al Richardson was pairing up bowlers for a high-low doubles. Ernie Rogie was now accustomed to his new surroundings and renewing acquaintances, and he was now joined by Walter Valentin, Sid Morris, and Ken Edge. It was all I could do to control myself as I walked over to see this large group. "I'm Walter Heeney," I said, with hesitation, and John, Wilf, Jim, Ralph, and Bob recognized me and quickly introduced me to Leon Hudecki. "How did you get here?" remarked Leon. I was quick to add that I was just visiting. Oscar Kinsler was in the process of installing pin setters with invisible string, and Tom Craig was busy certifying the lanes. Bob Totsky, however, quickly took over. "Now that you're here," he said, "why don't you bowl with us?" The offer was too good to refuse. On these lanes of the future, no one wore bowling shoes. A simple touch on the foot and it was as smooth as any bowling shoe. You automatically stopped prior to the foul line as sensors slowed you down. The scoreboards were all computerized, and the digital scoreboards were manned by the best. Charlie Hill, Red McQuaker, Bill Graham, and Marge Bentley, old friends from CBA days, and from the current era, Arnold Whitley, Walter Knapp, Harold Stoddard, Ed Holland, Henry Fair, and Don Walker. Henry Pachulik was offering instruction, but with few takers. As well, newly arrived Riel Champagne was introducing French classes. "Personalized bowling balls? Been using them for years," said a voice I recognized as Mert Rowell of Hamilton. "And I hear they're very popular down there as well." Windsor's Don Gwindon was trying to run a fundraiser, but fundraising didn't seem to be an issue. As I looked around, bowlers were warming up everywhere. Hamilton had their own team, as Mert, Stan Battersby, Dick Brett, Ab Collingwood, Edna Rimmer, Lloyd Ormerod, Vera Ward, Bert Adams, Glad Lenz, and Cass Hollick played with great ease. Bert Adams could throw the ball faster than ever, and Shirley Bedell was now joined by Ev Wood, Fred Smith, Irene Whitley, Susan Davies, Pat Mahoney, Betty Jones, and Helen McCallum, a very potent Hamilton team. On some other lanes, Toronto area bowlers were just as active. Fraser Hambley was there, and I couldn't resist the opportunity to say hello. I told him that I missed our bowling conversations and our weekly golf games. He could only agree and said that he was making himself at home with his many friends from across Ontario. And he thanked me for his chapter in the new 5-pin bowling history book. I saw Corky Rumsen. I also saw the snowman Al Snow, Ernie Hughes, Russ Hercombe, Hugh Connolly, Charlie DeMellis, Rolly Glenfield, Eddie Hawks, Fred Hawley, Earl Jones, Ken Roy, Ron Gifford, Terry Noon, Lee McBay, Fred Petchulek, Nora Oakley, Mabel McDowell, Ma Morey, Doris Luke, Ollie Miller, Millie Evans, and my old instruction partner, Theda Procher. Holly Lead and Jimmy Holt were together. It was just like old times. Lots of small talk with the ladies. Nothing changes. Jake Halliwell was planning a tour for Halliwell's All-Stars. Basil Gazdia and Connie D'Alessandro were chatting, a little English, a little Italian, and they were now joined by the two Primos, Primo Vagnini and Primo Falcioni. I met my old friend Tom Horton, and he was beaming over the recent induction of his daughter Sandy. And I also said hello to both Shirley and Ross Wilson, as Shirley had now joined Ross, thinking that he needed some unneeded guidance. As usual, Ross had the biggest grin on his face that you ever saw. A provincial all-star team consisted of Mark Bratkin of Bramalea, Thelma Thompson, June Gregg, Orv Bowman, and Norm Kratz of Kitchener, Emile Cote and Doug Connerty of Ottawa, Johnny Moyer and Marge Heldman of Waterloo, and both of them were talking over old times with Bill Betker. B. Ross Gatelko of Oshawa, Doris Stewart, Jerry Carlson, and Helen Richards of Scarborough, and Oshawa's Bob Gallagher were there, and Bob was ready to bowl doubles with his old friend Dick Adams of Whitby. I saw Marg Morrissey, and in her own way, she apologized for missing her own dinner. Dot Britton was there, and both Dot and Marg had lots to catch up on. Joe Chickey was as smooth as ever. Mickey Piker added to the strong Niagara group, along with Marge Summers. Bob Falconer was busy just organizing, and Verna Bryan added her bubbly personality to the Niagara group. John Scholes had arrived from British Columbia to assist. Just then, another familiar face caught my eye, none other than Percy Cutting. Better yet, Percy was not alone, as Flo was now beside him. He was beaming. "The Hall of Fame is a perfect place," said Percy. "Flo and I can bowl all we want, and we share the secretarial duties." As well, Jack Hales, Billy Holt, is there with a glint in his eye, talking to everyone about the good old days. And of course, Bert Garside is here. And Bert and Jack have found a racetrack where every horse you bet on is a winner. Bill Bird had already given a speech, and Bob Coulter, along with Mickey McNeil, started a newsletter called The Heavenly Times. Could bingo be far behind? Before I could bowl, Percy wanted the latest news. I told him that yes, John Cresswell continues as president of the Ontario 5-Pin Bowlers Association, and it's now 14 years in a row, tying Jack Hales for the longest serving president, and also being inducted this evening as a builder. Brenda Pankoff is also doing a great job as she continues as the Hall of Fame chair. You could just see the gleam in Percy's eye, and you knew he enjoyed the news. Just as I was about to bowl my first ball, Percy grabbed me by the arm and held me back. A silence came over the lanes as the Legends team arrived. Tommy Ryan led the way, but he was closely followed by Tony Vitus, Brock Bailey, Marion Dibble, George Corbridge, Jimmy Morris, Frank Smith, Al Gard, and Vera Inglis, his friends from the early days of bowling. "Did you ever meet Tommy?" asked Percy. "No," I replied. "Well, tonight's the night," he said, as we glided across the lanes to where Tommy and his friends were situated. "Tommy, I want you to meet Walter Heeney," said Percy. "No," he continued, "he hasn't arrived here yet. he appears to just have a special pass. Quickly, I tried to pull my thoughts together. As Tommy noted, our sport has lasted over 100 years. We have lots to celebrate, including a stamp which was created for 5-pin bowling's 100th birthday. Thanks to everyone for their current efforts to rebuild our sport. Somehow the conversation seemed to end as Tommy rolled out the first ball for the evening's activity. And just like that, I woke up. The 5-Pin Bowling Hall of Fame, it exists. I've seen it. Yes, I've even been there. Thank you.